County's free debris removal, fill out a right of entry form, or get a list of disaster recovery centers that are still active, please visit recovery.lacounty.gov or call the debris hotline at 844-347-3332. If you're vulnerable to mudslides with rain in the forecast, free sandbags are being offered. Go to lacounty.pw/sandbags to find out where to get them. Businesses who have lost their facilities due to the fires can use a regional online source to get free or discounted locations. Whether you're interested in donating or finding space, you can visit the Business to Business Space Share portal at spaceshare.lacounty.gov. Additional LA County small business support and programs can be found at opportunity.lacounty.gov. Praying, advocating, and standing with you. KBLA Talk 1580.
We gon' get it right. We gon' get it right. We gon' get it right. We gon' get it right.
Protests and anthems, yes, we chanting a movement of people. It's like we dancing to the ministry of. It's the energy of, in memory of them that we love. The trinity of the people, the peace, the power, the truth. We speak the powers even louder. We can say it blacker, we can say it prouder. A woman vice president that went to Howard. Now we talk helping black businesses, and our differences is magnificent. Bringing light to the poor where the prisons is. I was told good life is where forgiveness lives. The ascension is to leave what's left behind and feed the seeds with deeds that bless the mind, caress the mind, and question justify. With you and God in time, I best align.
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing you by. Shine, flies, be patient, cause good things happen in time. We gon' get it right, we gon' get it right. We gon' get it right. We gon' get it right.
How can I be a better father?
We're gonna get it right. We sure are. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm your host and Chief White House Correspondent, Dr. Nii-Quartelai Corte, reporting for duty. Happy Monday, everyone. Did you see that Super Bowl game? Did you see Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles in action? I've been excited all day. I don't know about you. I'm so hyped. Between the game itself and the halftime show starring Kendrick Lamar with special appearances from SZA and Serena Williams and Samuel L. Jackson. We'll talk more about that in the second hour. But in this hour, it's time for your national news roundup. It's time for the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. And you decide which story is today's dumpster fire. Kicking us off, USA Today is reporting on that buyout that has been blocked. The judge has extended the pause on Trump's federal worker program. That's right. A federal judge in Boston extended his block today on the Trump administration's deadline for more than 2 million federal employees to accept a controversial buyout after labor unions challenged the plan's legality. The U.S. District Judge, George O'Toole, who had paused the buyout offer on Thursday, issued a temporary restraining order today against the program. He said the order would remain in place until, quotes, I respond to the issues presented. This means that about 65,000 federal workers signed up for the program through Friday. The goal of the Department of Government Efficiency, headed by Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, is to shrink the federal workforce as a part of an effort to save trillions in spending. But that's not it. The department is also working to dismantle the U.S. Agency for International Development, which provides foreign aid, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a consumer watchdog set up in 2011 after the financial crisis. I think what's interesting is they aren't going anywhere near the Defense Department. Now, think about this, y'all. The defense budget represents at least half, probably more than half of the federal budget, the Defense Department alone. And so if you are looking for waste, fraud, and abuse, wouldn't you go after the biggest budget that exists? Wouldn't you start with the biggest piece of the budget first? Why are you nibbling around the edges over at United States uh, Agency for International Development? Why are you nibbling at the edges of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? Just as a matter of, scale and size of budget, they don't come close to the U.S. Defense Department. And what about the Treasury Department? What about other departments out there? Why are you picking on these ones? The truth shall be revealed at some point. But in other news, but keeping with the courts, a judge has ruled that the White House failed to comply with their court order. The New York Times is reporting that a federal judge today said that the White House had defied his order to release billions of dollars in federal grants, marking the first time a judge has expressly declared that the Trump White House was disobeying a judicial mandate. The ruling by Judge John J. McConnell Jr. in Rhode Island federal court ordered the Trump administration officials to comply with what he called the plain text of an edict he issued on January 29th. The order, he wrote, was clear and unambiguous, and there are no impediments to the defendant's compliance with it. Shortly after the ruling, administration lawyers appealed his initial order to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit, asking the appellate court to pause Judge McConnell's order to keep federal funds flowing while their case was being considered. The White House responded defiantly. Now, the legal actions on Monday, just today, they marked a step towards what could evolve quickly into a high-stakes showdown between the executive and judicial branches. Just a day after a social media post by Vice President J.D. Vance claimed that, quotes, judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. Say what? An outright refusal to comply with the judicial branch's constitutional oversight authority could be considered a constitutional crisis. That is worth noting. How did the party of law and order become the party of lawlessness? Lawlessness. That's what that is. Let's call it what it is. And so this does not look good, but we're going to keep our eye on it. You know what else doesn't look good? Trader Joe's, Costco, Sprouts, they've all put limits on fresh eggs amid the shortage. Now, I just went grocery shopping earlier today, and I think the cheapest carton of eggs I found was $4.99, and the most expensive carton of eggs that I found was $13.99. That's probably why grocery stores are now enforcing purchase limits on fresh eggs as the avian flu continues to impact egg-laying flocks across the country. ABC News is reporting that a representative for Trader Joe's confirmed to Good Morning America just today that, quotes, due to ongoing issues with the supply of eggs, we're currently limiting egg purchases to 1 dozen per customer per day in all Trader Joe's stores across the country. More than 150 million poultry birds have been killed in an attempt to combat the virus known as H5N1, which has caused egg prices to soar and supplies to be limited. Other retailers, including Sprouts and Costco, have also implemented purchase limits on fresh eggs, and many shoppers have taken to social media, posting images and videos of empty refrigerator sections where the fresh eggs would typically be. I did notice today at the grocery store, there was that the refrigerator holding the eggs, it wasn't completely empty, but I would say it was mostly empty. It probably had 25% of what would normally be in there. And so, plan ahead for your eggs. Plan ahead for your eggs. I think that's the lesson there. When we come forward, there are many lessons from this election, but the question is, are there lessons that will cause damage that we can't reverse, particularly when it comes to the environment? When we come forward, I'll be joined with Dorien Paul Blythers. He's the former chief of staff over at the U.S. Department, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, rather. He's also former political advisor to the second gentleman and founder and CEO of Good Rebel, a Los Angeles-based social impact agency. He recently sat down with our colleagues over at the GRIO to talk about how the Trump administration is cutting environmental justice office and putting Black communities at a great risk for pollution. We're going to get the skinny when we come forward. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
They can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips, I am a revolutionary.
On Saturday, February 22nd, you are invited to A Night with the Panthers, a special fundraiser dedicated to supporting Black Panther veterans who now require assistance with essential needs such as medicine, food, and housing. These Black Panther veterans championed human rights, fed the hungry, educated the community, and stood as powerful symbols of resistance and resilience. Despite their incredible sacrifices, loving and serving the people did not come with retirement plans or financial security. So, now it's our time to honor their legacy and ensure that they are cared for with the dignity they deserve. You can help by attending and supporting A Night with the Panthers, Saturday, February 22nd, 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Project 43 Team Post Center, 6841 Crenshaw Boulevard, Los Angeles. For more information, contact Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. That's Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
With Target, checking off your Valentine's Day list has never been easier. First, surprise your favorite people with something extra thoughtful, like a soothing candle in a memorable scent, or a decorative picture frame to show off every moment. Both buy one, get one 50% off with Target Circle. And don't forget to treat yourself. Find the sweetest style for your special occasion with 20% off women's dresses now through Friday. This week, find Valentine's gifts for everyone you love, only at Target.
I can't believe how spotless my floors look after using the Swiffer Power Mop. No more dragging around a heavy mop and messy bucket. Now I get the same deep clean without all the work. Thanks to the powerful solution and scrubbing pad of the Swiffer Power Mop, dirt and grime don't stand a chance, and I don't break a sweat. Mic drop. Mop drop.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
A smarter way to mop. Try it or your money back.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hit me!
National News The Consequence. Informed opinion. And analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Corte, and y'all know that KBLA has had a serious commitment to climate justice. In fact, just last year, we launched a multi-million-dollar campaign to really amplify the voices of leaders on the front lines and to connect the dots and help people understand that environmental issues are issues that matter to Black people. They're issues that matter in our Black communities. And, when I learned about this latest story, I knew exactly who to call, somebody who has a track record of advancing environmental justice issues inside and outside of government. I want to welcome Dorien Paul Blythers to the show. Dorien Paul is the founder and CEO of Good Rebel, which is a Los Angeles-based social impact agency. He has formerly served as the Deputy Chief of Staff at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. He's also former political advisor to our now former second gentleman, Doug Emhoff. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Quartelai. I'm glad to be on today talking about these issues. It's hard keeping up with as much as as is happening right now. But you're absolutely right that this headline shook a community of people who I know are committed to issues of environmental and climate justice. So I'm happy we're having this conversation.
Well, and a timely conversation it is. We're blessed to have you here, but just to orient our audience, the Trump administration right now is on a rampage across the federal government, working very aggressively to shrink government, by a lot of reports, intimidate federal employees to resign on their own, and considering other means to get people out of federal government. That is not a good thing when it comes to issues like environmental justice. We know that the former EPA administrator, Michael Regan, had gone on this environmental justice tour. I'd never seen an EPA administrator do it quite like this, and do it for as extended a time as he did. Dorien, talk to us about that tour that you were a part of organizing, and what you all sought to do on that tour and how it informed the creation of the Office of Environmental Justice.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it was an honor to serve alongside Administrator Regan, who had actually started off his career working as an intern at the Environmental Protection Agency. For context, he's someone who knows that agency inside and out and like the back of his hand. But with the journey to justice, as we would become to understand or name this effort, the administrator set out to go essentially where no EPA administrator had gone before. And that was right into the belly of the beast, right into the communities that had been bearing the brunt of environmental injustices for decades without real support from an administration that would come in and commit to actually delivering on promises made to actually support these communities and change their situation. So we're talking about everything from poor water infrastructure, where people in the Deep South are still using straight pipes in their homes, the pipes in their homes, which essentially means you use the restroom and that waste is in your backyard. You're living with it. We worked on issues including clean water, even access to water in places like Jackson, Mississippi, where schools would have to shut down for days because of the lack of water pressure in the pipes, right? That's an environmental injustice. And certainly it's one where there are cumulative impacts, that extend beyond just environment. Now we're talking about school systems as well. But the journey to justice was a fascinating opportunity to give mainstream media, local media, podcasts, and other outlets an opportunity to have a front row seat to understanding this issue. We called it the journey to justice, in part to acknowledge the work that had come before the administrator and the Biden administration. But also, I think it was important to name it that because it was clear that this was not going to be a rubber stamp. This was not going to solve all of the injustices that Black and brown communities often bear the brunt of, but that this would be the beginning to a new commitment and ability by this administration to effectuate change in a real way. It was that tour where he spent time in places like Puerto Rico, in the Deep South, in Southern California, in West Virginia, right in coal country, where we got an opportunity to talk directly to those who are impacted and living with conditions like cancer, folks who had extreme cases of asthma in their communities because of corporations that essentially weren't being held accountable. They weren't being held accountable in the community, at the community level, at the state level. And the federal government said, no longer. We're going to be on this journey with you. And it was an opportunity for the community to also be seen in a way that they had never been seen before.
And now all of that is at risk. All of that hard work, all of that effort to really listen to folks on the ground and do something, not just at the federal level, but in collaboration with state and local partners, to institutionalize the change at EPA. And according to the New York Times, the agency has placed 168 workers from the Environmental Justice Office on administrative leave, folks who report to the EPA headquarters in Washington, D.C. And they're doing this in an effort to be compliant with President Trump's executive order to eliminate all environmental justice programs. Dorien, what's your reaction to this EO calling for the elimination of all environmental justice programs like the Journey to Justice program, among others, that you had a hand in creating?
My first reaction to this really is heartbreak. And it's heartbreak for the civil servants at EPA that have been doing this work. They don't work for a political party. These are not Joe Biden loyalists. These are career civil servants. These are scientists. These are technical experts. These are public affairs specialists. These are folks who get up and serve their country every day there at that headquarters in Washington, D.C. So to wake up and learn that nearly 200 of my former colleagues that really do some of the greatest and best work of our federal government, which is keeping our communities safe and healthy, have this looming cloud of uncertainty that really sits and hovers over the agency. And that is being done at the hands of President Musk, or rather President Trump. And
these days,
Musk, right? Who's really in charge here? But that's my first reaction. The second thing is that we've got to call this what it is. This feels like environmental Jim Crow, right? This is us reverting back to the days where there wasn't an environmental protection agency. For context, the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights was actually founded really under the premise that we will no longer, Americans, corporations would no longer be able to discriminate through any means when it comes to race, origin, and where people live geographically, right? So Black and brown communities, we were able to justify ways to actually hold these companies accountable by delivering real enforcement actions. So that was a new tool that the agency had not yet leveraged, right? How do we hold them accountable? Certainly for the pollution that they cause, whether that's, emitting particulate air right into the environment, whether that is through toxins that shows up in our water. But for us to be able to look at the trend lines and say, this is disproportionately impacting Black people in Jackson, Mississippi, right? Or this is directly impacting Black and brown folks in Louisiana, where we know a lot of the petrochemical companies live. That is what the founding of this office did. And to gut that leaves these communities vulnerable. It leaves them in a position to fend for themselves. And it is so important that we rally around these communities now and look at legacy institutions who have been working at the forefront of environmental justice for decades in order to keep our communities safe. We realize that this can't stand as it is.
I just want to connect the dots for our leaders, learners, and listeners, because I certainly am detecting a recurring theme, and we're not even a full month into the Trump, Vance, Musk administration. But, when you look at the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and you talked about this in your interview with our friends over at the GRIO, you mentioned how the Civil Rights Act of 1964, part of the power from that was the power to enforce non-discrimination laws to protect public health, for example.
That's right.
And you said in that interview with the GRIO that there's no one stopping states from letting corporations dump toxic waste in poor, working class communities. And so if we don't have that support, if we don't have that watchdog from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, if we don't have a watchdog looking out for these communities at the Department of Justice, if we don't have a watchdog looking out for people at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, if we don't have a watchdog at some of these key agencies whose work makes a material difference in the lives of everyday Americans, then what do they have?
That's a great question. That's a great question. And I think this is an opportunity for us to uplift the folks who are doing this work. When you don't have the social safety system that is supposed to be in place, the safety net to keep us safe, we have to look within our communities and take that on ourselves. So I look to organizations that are doing citizen science work, right? These are folks who are working directly in communities at the front lines and on the fence lines of some of America's most dangerous polluters. I think about the Deep South Center in New Orleans, Louisiana, headed up by Dr. Beverly Johnson. I think about Dr. Beverly Wright, excuse me. I think about our community organizations at the ground level, like the NAACP, who has its own environmental justice initiative that's been holding communities accountable for a long time. But we've got to take what is happening in our communities and utilize the platforms that we have now to ensure that this doesn't get to persist without being held accountable. And all we can do is take care of one another. We can also speak about these issues and educate one another so that we know things like when boil water advisories should be issued, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps here in Southern California, where folks are still wearing masks, right? Following the wildfires.
We're going to talk more about that in a moment. When we come forward, we can't talk about environmental justice and not talk about Flint, Michigan, and the shenanigans that are that are happening right now in Michigan. We're talking environmental Jim Crow 2.0 with Dorien Paul Blythers. He's the founder and CEO of Good Rebel, a social impact agency in Los Angeles. More with this former chief of staff at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Enlightened and empowered about issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice. You tuned into the right place. A More Perfect Union continues when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. A judge is blocking the Trump administration from sending 3 Venezuelan migrants to Guantanamo Bay. The migrants held in New Mexico raised concerns after similar transfers began. Leaked documents say ICE plans a large-scale immigration crackdown in Los Angeles before February ends. While enforcement has increased nationwide, LA has not seen major action yet. Protests continue against Trump's mass deportation strategy. Tiger Woods is withdrawing from the PGA event he hosts in California as he mourns his mother's passing. He said on X he planned to play but is not ready. Woods still hopes to attend the Genesis Invitational later this week and thanked his fans for their support. And Black Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass's wildfire recovery czar, Steve Soboroff, will now work for free after backlash over his $500,000 salary for 90 days. His pay was originally set to come from charities. I'm Amber Payton on the Black Information Network, your home for Black News First.
West LA, southbound side of the 405, that's slowing down away from Sunset Boulevard and stretches all the way to the 710 freeway. The northbound side of the 405 delays out of Culver City, leaving the 90 all the way back to that 5 merge heading into Selmar. Now we're heading out to downtown LA, 101 southbound at Bigness. A crash in the right lane sent you back from Hollywood Boulevard. And slowing in Corona, 91 eastbound leaving Main Street and stretches to Adams in Riverside. In Riverside, a work zone on the 215 northbound central to Martin Luther King Boulevard. 2 right lanes off limits. That should be wrapping up.
If you or someone you know is affected by the Los Angeles wildfires, you are not alone. No matter how sad, scared, or heartbroken you feel, Cal Hope is here for you and all those affected by the devastating wildfires. Find free, safe, and confidential mental health support at calhope.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Anthony Davis's injury troubles have followed him to Dallas. The former Lakers star will be out at least a month with a strained abductor muscle. AD was hurt in his debut game with the Mavericks on Saturday against Houston. Before suffering the injury in the third quarter, AD was torching Houston in his first game in front of Mavericks fans. 26 points, 16 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 block shots. Mavericks fans, angered by the trade that sent Luka Doncic to the Lakers, will have to wait a while to see if AD can ease the pain of losing Doncic. A future star in women's gymnastics is coming from an HBCU school. Morgan Price, a junior at Fisk University in Nashville, became the first HBCU gymnast to earn a perfect 10 in NCAA competition. Judges gave Price a 10 for her performance on the uneven bars in a meet Saturday at Temple University. Price also won the all-around competition in the meet at Temple. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black. Keep following the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
Now back to building a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai. He is Dorien Paul Blythers. He's founder of Good Rebel, which is a Los Angeles-based social impact agency. He's also the former chief of staff to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Administrator, Michael S. Regan, and former political advisor to Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff. This is someone who has a lot of credibility when it comes to work in the environmental justice space. And, you know, he is as disappointed as anyone who believes in justice for our communities when it comes to just some of the most recent actions of the Trump administration. If you haven't heard, they are dismantling the Office of Environmental Justice, an office that took a long time to create, but through the swipe of his pen, the Environmental Justice Office is going away. And one of the most searing examples of environmental injustice in our time is the Flint water crisis. Dorien, in the interview you did with the Griot, you referenced this years-long lead pipe crisis in Flint, Michigan, that for our leaders, learners, and listeners who are a little less familiar, it began in 2014. And in 2022, we saw a water crisis very similar in Jackson, Mississippi. You said in that interview with the Griot, how many times do we have to prove that clean water and air isn't a given when you're Black in America? Why is it that we aren't hearing more of an outcry, given that this is an issue that impacts many Black communities across the United States?
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. It's that there are Flints all across this country. And President Biden and Vice President Harris acknowledge that. It's why, there was a commitment by their administration to have the lead pipes replaced. These things don't happen overnight, and certainly would have carried into the next administration in terms of having federal agencies work directly with states and cities to ensure that this work could progress. We passed an infrastructure bill that allowed us to do that, but without the agency and structure in place for us to ensure that that actually happens, I think that we'll be concerned about communities like Flint for years to come. And for folks who are listening, it's important to acknowledge not all of the pipes in Flint have been replaced. There are still lead pipes there, right? And that's going to take a multi-layered governmental approach to working with communities in order to ensure that that can happen, so that communities can ultimately have drinking water that they can be confident is safe for them to drink.
And we've had former Flint Mayor Karen Weaver on our show a number of times. It's a part of our ongoing commitment to make sure that we never forget the lessons of Flint. Folks there that still have not been made whole. Yes, there's been some progress in terms of pipes being replaced, but still there are too many homes where that in-home plumbing still has not been replaced. Therefore, people aren't getting the clean water that they deserve. I just want to add that the Detroit News is reporting that the EPA environmental justice workers were charged with administering more than $2.8 billion earmarked for environmental and climate justice work in underserved and polluted communities in the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act. Dorien, what's going to happen with that money? Where that money going to go?
That is a great question. And the good news is there are some organizations around the country that have received those funds. But as I understand, not all of that money has gotten out of the door. We've been seeing the headlines and reading the news about freezing payments that are outgoing from the federal government. I am concerned, gravely concerned that organizations, cities, states, municipalities that were eligible to receive, this funding, be it through community change grants or other grant programs set up under that allotment, that they won't get that. So, again, it leaves them scrambling to make good on the commitments, of this past administration, but also of our local elected officials who are in place to make us whole in this case.
And as somebody who is, a former chief of staff to the United States Environmental Protection Agency administrator, you understand just sort of the day-to-day operation of the agency, right? There, of course, are, these grand commitments that are made, There are politics that have to be navigated, but then there's the day-to-day work that happens inside these agencies. It's been reported that the employees were placed on leave. The ones who were placed on leave, they received a notice with really scant details about how long they would be placed on leave, while the remaining employees are trying to continue their work and uphold the Constitution and stay within guidelines issued by the new administration. What have you heard from some of your current some of the current employees that you might still be in touch with at the EPA? What have you heard from some of your former colleagues in terms of just how disruptive this is to work that is critically important to everyday Americans?
I understand that this has left a lot of people feeling gutted, these career civil servants that have been doing this work for years. And when I say that, just to even paint a more vibrant picture, most of my colleagues at the EPA had been there for decades. And it's not an exaggeration. It's a place where people start working, out of college and continue to live full careers until retirement. It's one of the pride and joys of the federal agency community, and to have a coveted spot at EPA where their employees have previously, been treated so well and have had the opportunity to do their work, where our leaders who have trusted and believed in science, empowered them to do so. What this means now with these folks placed on administrative leave is not only is there uncertainty about their careers and what may happen should they actually be removed from service, but also what will happen to the communities that are being served by this agency. The mission of EPA is to protect the environment and human health. What this means is that there are field representatives who are not able to show up to community meetings. What this means is that there are stories about toxic either air or chemicals that are being released or smelled in communities, experience that will not be seeing the light of day in terms of stories, because the public affairs officials can't have that conversation with journalists. What it means is that the scientific research and studies that our agency our agencies do, those are being brought to a halt as well, which could be jeopardizing our investment in ensuring that we're making progress on seeing clean air and clean water in our communities. This is gutting, and I think that folks are really beginning to weigh their options. If you remember, when President Biden came into office, he essentially adopted the Scott Pruitt EPA, which was notorious for mismanagement. It was notorious for a number of different ethical infractions. And they also released a lot of staff. A lot of people left the agency. So under Michael Regan's leadership, the administrator was able to bring back nearly 2,000 civil servants that serve this agency that's made up of nearly 16,000 people across 9 regions in this country. That's significant to an agency of this size, especially when it comes to dealing with direct issues of public health in our communities. We had staff dedicated to that. They're now sitting at home, unsure about what comes next.
Dorien, in our remaining minute, I want to give you a chance to respond to the story that just broke before we came on air. A Hawaii court has ruled against insurance companies in the Maui wildfire, allowing a $4 billion settlement to proceed. For folks who are less familiar, Hawaii Supreme Court ruled today that insurance companies can't bring their own legal actions against those blamed for the Maui catastrophic 2023 wildfire. This, of course, allows a $4 billion settlement that was on the verge of collapse to proceed. I believe you were at the EPA when the Maui fire took place. What's your reaction to this story?
I think about often, especially now, given that we've had significant wildfires here in Southern California, about the nearly 100 lives that were lost during those wildfires in Hawaii. These are scary times for a lot of folks, especially those of us who live in communities where it feels like climate change is knocking at the front door every other week. But this is a huge win for the victims of this fire. I think that what this does is it should be putting insurance companies on notice, especially those here, who have customers in Southern California. You're not going to be able to pass the buck to the utilities or whoever else the defendants in these cases may be. This is something that's going to expedite victims who are seeking to make themselves whole again, getting the resources that that were awarded to them. $4 billion is a lot of money, and the fact that that's been held up in the courts for nearly 2 years. I know that there are families and directly impacted folks in Hawaii who are able to breathe a little bit easier today, knowing that that money should be delivered. And I hope that this is a precedent-setting decision for a state like California, who certainly has tens of thousands of impacted individuals who are looking to recoup funds from their insurance companies as well.
Our thanks to Dorien Paul Blythers, the founder of Good Rebel. It's a Los Angeles-based social impact agency. The people of California, the people out west are lucky to have you there in your new adopted home. And we'll be checking in with you as we continue to navigate the unknown.
That's right. Well, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure, and look forward to getting back to work.
Absolutely. You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. The quiet part out loud when we come forward. Spoiler alert, as if he couldn't get more petty.
A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up.
Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number and put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
We face tragedy, but we don't fall into despair. We continue our work to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, your host and chief White House correspondent, and it's about that time for the quiet part out loud. Now, listen, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that the job of being the president of the United States is one of the toughest jobs in the world. It ain't easy. And it's not supposed to be easy, especially a president presiding over democracy. It is messy. And even when you do your best to listen to voices across the spectrum, the political spectrum, let alone your own party, it's not easy. And so how a president would have the time and the capacity to do the job of being president while also being the chair of the Kennedy Center is beside me. I'm scratching my head on that one. Why would you want to be the chair of the Kennedy Center? You're the president of the United States. You got to travel the country. You got to travel the world. You got to broker peace. You got to bring down the cost of eggs, of energy. You got to usher in the golden age of America. That's what he said. He was ushering in the golden age of America. NPR reporting that President Trump says that he's taking over leadership of the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. He declared himself chairman of Washington, D.C.'s long celebrated cultural institution. He did this just this past Friday. And in doing so, he's going to replace billionaire philanthropist David Rubenstein, an ally of former President Joe Biden, who was set to be the chair through 2026. So pound around with Joe Biden, poof, you're gone. Posting on Truth Social, Trump wrote that he was immediately terminating multiple individuals from the center's board of trustees who, quotes, don't share our vision for a golden age in arts and culture. Trump said that he would soon announce a new board with an amazing chairman, Donald J. Trump. He also called out the center's programming, saying, quotes, just last year, the Kennedy Center featured drag shows, especially targeting our youth. This will stop. The Kennedy Center is an American jewel. It must reflect the brightest stars on its stage from all across our nation. For the Kennedy Center, the best is yet to come. Now, a representative for Rubenstein, co-founder and co-chairman of the private equity giant Carlyle, said that he had no comment about the news, but a statement from the Kennedy Center said that they had received no official communication from the White House regarding changes to the board of trustees, though they were aware the board members received termination notices. Now, what makes this even worse is that a lot of these people are just finding ways to serve. You know, every day we end every hour of the show encouraging folks to do what they can from where they are with what they have. And that means a number of people volunteer in so many different ways, including serving on boards like the board of the Kennedy Center. Well, former White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre just a few hours ago put up a post on Instagram saying, quotes, that the Kennedy Center has been a place of tremendous joy for me and my family for many years, from attending the Kennedy Center honors to enjoying a performance with my daughter, to this past holiday season participating as guest narrator in The Night Before Christmas with the National Symphony Orchestra Pops. I love everything about this remarkable institution and will always hold many precious memories close to my heart. It was an honor. Operative word was. It was an honor to be appointed and to be on the board. I'll be fine, but we all must continue the work to ensure that the arts and humanity remain a core fabric of our society and culture. This is when we must double down on believing that all hope is not lost, and the only people who can push us forward to our greatest humanity is us. We got this, KJP. So, the latest casualty in the Petty Olympics with the Petty Olympics Olympic gold medalist, President Donald J. Trump, who, for folks who are just joining us, the president is getting rid of the board. He's cleaning up shop at the Kennedy Center, and he intends to preside as the chair of the Kennedy Center because being president of the United States isn't busy enough. Being president of the United States, apparently you got a lot of free time on your schedule to be chairman of the board of the Kennedy Center. When we come forward in our next hour, we're going to be switching gears, and we're going to be talking about the Super Bowl performance. And we're also going to talk with an expert about reinventing ourselves, reimagining ourselves. Her story caught my attention, and I have a feeling it's going to catch yours as well. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. A third federal judge is blocking President Trump's order to limit birthright citizenship, calling it unconstitutional. Similar rulings came from judges in Seattle and Maryland last week. Immigrant rights groups say Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams' guidance